Hello, friends. My name is Dan, and welcome back to my new mini-series called Under Oath. This is episode 1. So I am representing myself in a criminal trial facing an assault allegation. The questions and answers you're about to hear are the actual questions and answers that I asked the police officers under cross-examination. And back for episode 1 is Greg Horonowitsch, VicPD, badge number 422. Now this episode is going to be a little bit different than the first one. You may recall the first one, I just asked Greg one question and he answered it. In this episode, I'm going to ask Greg 6 questions in a row. He's going to answer them all. And then I'm going to ask him to read a highlighted portion of his statement that he wrote on the day of the incident while under oath. So keep in mind that the 6 questions you're about to hear me ask, there's other questions in between those questions that I'm not going to put on this video. I want to try to keep this video relatively short. And to just bring you up to speed, there's a person on my property threatening me and my property, so I've called the police. And I live in a condo building, so when someone accesses the buzzer system, I don't necessarily know who it is. And I don't want to let that threatening person inside my building. So this first question you're about to hear is in the part of the trial where I'm cross-examining Greg on whether or not he refused to ID himself. If you've ever had to call the police because there's a threatening person on your property, you may not want to just open the door for anyone. Asking for a name or badge number is probably the best way to go about doing that. So let's start. And you refuse to ID yourself at the buzzer system. You agree? And shortly after that question, Greg has accessed my building and he is now outside of my door. And you were again asked to ID yourself. You remember? And you again refused. Isn't that the truth? You then threatened to break down my door. You remember? And after you stated that, I again asked you to ID yourself, and you again refused. Isn't that the truth? So you said, quote, only if you open your door, and only then I will ID myself, or something to that effect, right? And then I turned to the judge and said, Your Honor, I have a statement I'd like Constable Horonowitsch to read. It's the statement he wrote. I'd like him to read out loud the highlighted portion. Well, there you have it, folks. Greg didn't do so well in this episode of Under Oath. Not only did he write a statement on the day of the incident, stating in his own words that he refused to ID himself, but he then lied about it. On the stand, in a criminal trial, under oath. So what do you think about this? Leave a comment below. Is this acceptable for a police officer to do in court at a criminal trial while under oath? What do you think? Now, I think it's also important to point out that I made a complaint to the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner about Greg threatening to break down my door and refusing to ID himself multiple times. And although that complaint was found to be admissible, it was actually discontinued before an investigation could even be started. And that's largely due to a statement that Greg wrote denying having threatened to break down my door and refused to ID himself, and then went on to discredit me at great length. I'll just say that. So in closing, even though Greg admits in his statement that he wrote on the day of the incident did refuse to ID himself, when I made complaints about it, he denied having doing it. Therefore, my complaint was discontinued before an investigation even started. And now here he is, in a criminal trial, under oath, continuing to deny that he refused to ID himself. That is, of course, until he read the highlighted portion of his statement that he wrote on the day of the incident out loud. It's also worth noting that this is the same police officer that commented on one of my YouTube videos and harassed me about making complaints about him. And of course, upon me making a complaint about that, well, I was told that it's not a complaint and it's not going to be looked into. If you want to know more about that, I have a video called VicPD Retaliation. Check it out. Well, that's all for this episode. I'm your host, Dan. Thanks for watching, and I will be back for more.